This evidence is relevant in informing policy interventions and programming to cushion the sector in event of similar disruptions in future.
The emergence of e-learning, and we continue to learn a lot out of it, we realize that we require them to supply these students with gadgets or devices so that they can be able to attend classes. Already, the act is very clear. We are supposed to provide financial intermediation for student requirements. So today they might require a book, tomorrow they require ebook, the other day they require a laptop, the other day they require videos. So we are supposed to know where that is supposed to come from. That is explicit from the act.
One of the interesting things for me that has come out is that postgraduate students actually preferred doing online classes. This was especially during the pandemic, which is opposite to what undergraduate students preferred. Because you find that undergraduate students prefer to be there face-to-face, you know, that collegiate environment where they're meeting with their friends. For the postgraduate, the needs are very different because as you're doing your master's and PhD, you're more or less self-driven. You're more or less, it's more or less a more lonely path to take. So the collegiateness and that kind of need is reduced with the postgraduate student.
For you to be able to engage effectively in the virtual platform, you need certain gadgets. You need a phone in the list. This should be a smartphone. You need to have a laptop, which is the best or the ideal infrastructure that you might need. You also need internet and bundles and a seamless internet, an internet that is stable. Now, from our study, we found that most of the students who engaged in online learning were not able to have all these things. So from one of the research findings was that less than 50% of the students who engaged in online learning were not able to complete and attend all the classes.
Key to this is one, in encouraging and enhancing and if possible sustaining public-private partnerships in terms of one, capacity development. Now, in terms of capacity development, we did find out in the research is that some of the resources, especially human resources, were not well prepared to teach during COVID pandemic. For instance, there were cases where some people had actually to take some unpaid leave specifically to stay away so that they not be able to teach.
The other issue that arose, which was also an opportunity, it was a challenge at the beginning, but also an opportunity, this quick transition, you find the faculty as well as the students, they are not really prepared for that. But something has happened that disrupted the norm. And they had to either, someone early on said, like myself, in private universities, you really do not depend on the exchequer. You rely on the student. So lack of them means you are out of business.
In some instances, it would take a very long duration for these partnerships to be put on paper. With proper collaboration and discussions around this, I'm sure the process can be streamlined in a way that it is able to be more responsive. Because let's say during the COVID duration, if an institution, a private institution would like to bring in technology to a public institution, you might find the process might be really lengthened so that it is not maybe really responsive. So with proper discussions around this, maybe the process to be shortened.
I think the other thing that has of faculty to teach with technology.
I would say we also incorporate the role of research in...
were not well prepared to teach during COVID pandemic. For instance, there were cases where Some people had actually to take some unpaid leave specifically to stay away so that they not be able to teach.
The other issue that arose, which was also an opportunity, it was a challenge at the beginning, but also an opportunity, this quick transition, you find the faculty as well as the students, they are not really prepared for that. But something has happened that disrupted the norm. And they had to either, someone early on said, like myself, in private universities, you really do not depend on the exchequer. You rely on the student. So lack of them means you are out of business.
In some instances, it would take a very long duration for these partnerships to be put on paper. With proper collaboration and discussions around this, I'm sure the process can be streamlined in a way that it is able to be more responsive, because let's say during the COVID duration, if an institution, a private institution would like to bring in technology to a public institution, you might find the process might be really lengthy there, so that it is not maybe really responsive. So with proper discussions around this, maybe the process to be shortened.
I think the other thing that has come out is that access, especially off campus, requires partnerships. Partnerships with the mobile operators, partnership with technology providers. So there were many types of partnerships that are used to enhance access to quality higher education. And especially there is a partnership that is normally ignored, which is the partnership in building the capacity of faculty to teach with technology.
I would say we also incorporate the role of research in finding out what is it that is working and what is it that is not working, and how can we then create solutions from the evidence that is available.
One of the policy areas that PASGAR might have to go into properly in terms of research is the issue of public-private partnership. It looks like we are talking about many things coming on board. Infrastructure, ICT infrastructure is not cheap by any standards. Technology is
The conference achieved its objective to disseminate research findings and provide a platform to interrogate and deliberate on the evidence and policy recommendations emanating from the research evidence.
One of the things that PASCA needs to look at is the whole question about financing of higher education. There's been a huge conversation yesterday. How do we finance higher education? Especially how do we finance postgraduate studies? That's a key issue that has come out. The second thing that has come out is the whole question about, so how do we strengthen quality? While it was a topic, I think it's still something that requires to be worked on much more. What's the whole mechanism of quality strengthening? What are the quality assurance mechanisms in light of online training? They need to work on that. I think the last, which is not something to research on, but something to work on, is I think there's been almost unanimous agreement that we require pedagogical training for universities. It is assumed that the moment I become a professor, I know how to teach. Because I have a PhD in law, I know how to teach. This conference, I said, no, you must, it's one thing to have content, it's another to have pedagogy. And PASGAR used to have a program on PEDAL, which has all been said by everybody else, extremely useful. So can PASGAR be able to ensure that they partner with the universities, they partner with Q in a sustainable
involved. And the idea was, and I don't know whether we also were influenced by the idea of the African way of doing things, umoja ni nguvu, utengano ni udhaifu. We therefore wanted to go as a team on each of the phases of the project that we were involved in. And I think it worked well for us.
Participants drawn from the local higher education stakeholders comprising of Ministry of Education, the Higher Education Regulator, university leadership, the Higher Education Loans Board, researchers, lecturers, students, civil society, and the industry fully represented the true state of affairs as far as higher education during and post-COVID-19 is concerned.
To address these issues, there is a need for public-private partnerships between public institutions, universities, and telecommunication companies. Companies like Safaricom, Telecom, Knet provided affordable data solutions for both students and lecturers. But a policy framework is needed to fully leverage the potential of PPPs in higher education. This will ensure that universities are better prepared for future shocks and that students have access to quality education regardless of their socioeconomic status.
With this, Africa stands a great chance to shape the higher education sector, hence securing the future of the planet.
The Ministry of Health has confirmed the first coronavirus case in Kenya.
Coronavirus 2019, otherwise known as COVID-19, became a global pandemic, threatening the very coexistence of humanity. With close to 7 million deaths and about 1 billion cases, the world was literally brought to its knees. The pandemic quickly ravaged various sectors, having a significant impact on education across the world, with learning institutions, including universities, being forced to close down to prevent the spread of the virus. The closure of universities resulted in significant Against this backdrop, the Partnership for African Social and Governance Research completed a 2-year project aimed at strengthening equitable access to quality higher education during and beyond COVID-19. With the project now in the final phase of dissemination, our society operates within a knowledge-based economy, wherein the combined Our society operates within a knowledge-based economy, wherein the combination of abundant information and advanced data processing technologies holds a significant influence. Therefore, institutions responsible for generating knowledge, including universities, have assumed a crucial role in today's intricate knowledge economy system. This recognition of the role and place of universities and higher education in economic and social transformation constitutes the central element of the establishment of the Partnership for African Social and Governance Research and our mission of advancing research excellence for governance and public policy in Africa.
I take this opportunity to welcome you on behalf of PASGA and on behalf of the coordinating team that also pairs up as the steering committee for the doctoral in public policy. This event should have happened in 2020. Then we received a visitor. The visitor told us that you have to stay put, do not travel, but come 2023, we have now managed to have this physically.
With a lot of relief and excitement, the Partnership for African Social and Governance Research played host to the first physical joint annual academic seminar held from July 18th to 20th of the year 2023 in Nairobi, Kenya. This happened for the first time since the launch of the Collaborative Doctoral in Public Policy DPP program started in 2019. Over 30 DPP students and their supervisors gathered in one place to engage, network, and participate in various capacity strengthening activities.
My journey into research excellence and public policy excellence began in 2015 with the Masters of Research and Public Policy at the University of Lagos. So for me, this was just like a smooth and seamless transition into the doctoral program. This program has helped to teach me about research and policy engagement in not just the theoretical pattern, but in a real life scenarios.
The relationship between the applicant SMEs for business grant and the grant donors prior to giving the grant out. After the grant has been given to the awardees, to the grantees, the agency takes over to examine what happens within the principal, which is the grant donor, and the grant recipient, the grantee, which is now the agent.
The doctoral in public policy is being undertaken by the Partnership for African Social and Governance Research in partnership with the University of Nairobi, University of Ibadan, and University of Pretoria, with the financial support from the Carnegie Corporation of New York.
At the methodology, and we are going to use a mixed method approach with the exploratory sequential method, where you are going to go step by step to ensure that we are able to collect data that quite informs our standing. And in terms of data collection, It's also going to go on phases, and they're going to focus on desk review, key informant interviews, focus group discussions, and market sizing.
This JASS JAS program 2023 has really been beneficial to me because I've been able to interact with my supervisors and supervisors from the collaborating universities. And it's really been a learning process. So I've been able to also get to network with others from the other ends, and also to learn what they've been learning, and also to look at life in the PhD life in a different way.
A study by Akuru in 2019 shows that the rate of PhD production on the continent is not commensurate with the available supervisory capacity required to support a growing number of PhD intakes. This challenge is compounded by high PhD dropouts and low completion rates, largely because of high cost of programs on the continent.
So, countries are not yet investing in education. I asked you the question, how many African countries have been able to make up for the 26% required by UNESCO for education funding? No, Nigeria has 6%, 5%. So I think one basic thing is provide adequate funding for education. It's an investment that will bring results much, much later.
My methodology is a work in progress. My preference is to utilize a pragmatic research philosophy.
A research recently concluded by the Partnership for African Social and Governance Research 2023 revealed that only 7% of postgraduate students surveyed in Kenyan universities were able to attend scheduled classes. These challenges demand continued efforts to broaden and deepen the pool of emerging scholars in the social sciences, while at the same time creating an enabling environment for postgraduate studies and research to thrive in similar future shocks.
You are actually feeding into what you're doing in your respective places. Some of you are already working and addressing challenges that you encounter day to day.
I just put to birth 2nd of February this year. I had 2 boys, and so my twins are really, really small. And someone could ask, so why are you in Nairobi? Because of the support I have from my family, my husband said, you must be in Nairobi. Forget about the boys, they'll be fine. And why will he make such commitment and support? Because he knows that the things that I've gained during this program has enhanced even my own work.
Therefore, with the kind of collaboration between the stakeholders, the Partnership for African Social and Governance Research administers a fellowship program that is organized around different activities that include direct scholarships in form of tuition fees, subsistence allowance, and research grants, and network strengthening activities delivered in form of joint annual academic seminars.
Candidates who have the capacity, who have the ability, who have the aptitude and the capacity to actually venture on this research project. So in the way to bring quantity would mean university funding such candidates to be part of the program. And I think that that's what PASGA is doing. That's a quantity that is being added to the system through funding opportunities.
These annual convenings of all fellowship beneficiaries and their supervisors are intended to provide a platform for capacity strengthening. They also support cohort networking across the partnership in order to reduce isolation among fellows. They are safe spaces for students to present their research plans and the progress of their research projects for constructive feedback and general advice from peers and supervisors.
Doctoral in Public Policy is a program that tries to create a very excellent environment for both students and their supervisors to work to achieve the goal of the program. That is, people with PhDs that can answer to the challenges that will be put before PhDs. And to be able to do that, you need constant interaction to be able to supervise better
This year's event was organized around combined plenary sessions for both students and supervisors and in group sessions for students and supervisors.
Then we share examples. We share samples.
There were sessions for students to present their work in progress to the peers and supervisors for constructive feedback. Invited guests also enriched discussions and engagements. For instance, Professor Adigun Abaje, a scholar from University of Ibadan, delivered a stimulating talk on intergenerational dialogue, while Dr. Jonathan Tumebaze, the first PhD graduate, gave an inspiring speech about his PhD journey.
Being the first graduate is such a deep honor for me, to be able to come up and come out as the first graduate of the program. It is such a humbling experience, but also one that speaks very deeply in regards to a place of stewardship, that so much has been invested in me to this point. And I've been very, very fortunate, I must say, to have been mentored by the very best, I can say, right away from my undergrad to my master's and to my PhD. I've had people that have targeted me in a sense that they have identified me and they have poured themselves in me. So that I embody as part of the rich tradition and culture that has gone into me and mentored me to this point of finishing on the program.
PASGA has taken this to a higher level. But we were just interested in sponsoring research, dissertation completion, and then another research at postdoctoral level. What PASGA has done is to say that the policy terrain, the public policy terrain in Africa has been very problematic. And in order to begin to work on the African condition, to make it better, we need to address that policy terrain in a multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary manner, because at the end of the day, there is no policy matter that you can adequately capture or address from one disciplinary perspective. We must bring all relevant disciplines together, interface them, and enrich their experiences so that they're able to better capture the challenges as well as opportunities that face our continent.
The planned joint annual academic seminar met its objective to create a platform for students and supervisors across the partnership to network, to provide a safe for students to present their research plans and work in progress for constructive feedback from peers and supervisors, to provide an opportunity for capacity strengthening in research methods, supervision, and pedagogy, to motivate students to provide practical insights in their PhD journey in order to enhance completion rates.
The scholarship made my studying much more easy because with a scholarship, I don't have to worry about, my finances, my tuition fees, or my upkeep whilst studying. So it has been very beneficial in that regard.
By focusing on postgraduates and enhancing the capacity of African postgraduate students, we are seeing it as our responsibility to not just build capacity for Africa to solve Africa's problems, but also to learn, because you come from very different contexts. South Africa is quite diverse. So it is important for us as scholars also to go into this doctoral program, knowing that we are going to learn from our students as much as they are learning from us.
Universal principles. Anyone more?
I co-supervise with my co-supervisor together. At times we have been meeting virtually, but now we have met one-on-one where the three of us are able to meet, interact at the same thing and share more. That is to me the most important way.
There were sessions for capacity strengthening for our students. There were sessions for supervision, reflections on how we are supervising. This is what this JAS has done, the physical JAS. And I hope that we will be able to continue doing that every year, where we can bring students from students and faculty and probably rotate. This year we are here in Nairobi. Would wish to take it to any of the other two universities, so that at least we have that rotation, and the entire network gets to see that it is not just in Nairobi. This is Ibadan looks like. This is how Pretoria looks like. So we hope that we'll be able to do that rotation.
Together with our partners, our long-term desired outcome for the joint annual academic seminars is a vibrant community of public policy researchers, practitioners with self-generative capacity for production of successive pool of scholars. Our society operates within a knowledge-based economy, wherein the combination of abundant information and advanced data processing technologies holds a significant influence. Therefore, institutions responsible for generating knowledge, including universities, have assumed a crucial role in today's intricate knowledge economy system. This recognition of the role and place of universities and higher education in economic and social transformation constitutes the central element of the establishment of the Partnership for African Social and Governance Research and our mission of advancing research excellence for governance and public policy in Africa.
I take this opportunity to welcome you on behalf of PASGA and on behalf of the coordinating team that also pairs up as the steering committee for the doctoral in public policy. This event should have happened in 2020. Then we received a visitor.
Based curriculum, which eventually would then affect the entire education spectrum. But the implementation of that process had faced several challenges, ranging from issues around access, issues around financing, issues around governance. And who were then tasked with the responsibility of trying to make proposals to address access, to address equity, and to address governance. Concerning the university sector, the larger challenges were actually governance and financing. And on financing, before the recommendations of the Working Party, we used to implement a framework where universities got money based on the number of students that they had. The concern then was that the equity aspects are not being addressed. Therefore, the Working Party recommended a change of the framework for financing, a change to focus on two things. One, to ensure that students got scholarships, but also got loans, and that the funding would be based on the student and not on the institution. And it came up with several mechanisms, including the proposals to have a mean testing system. So we're able to determine the levels of need, and that will then govern what issues around scholarships and financing would then be. That's the first thing. The second thing it then did was to recognize that the governance arrangement in the sector had overlaps, had duplications, and therefore resulted in efficiencies and effectiveness, and made several proposals to improve governance, both from the management at the universities to the governance organs. There, we then recommended the change of several laws. And over the last 5 months, I've had the privilege of chairing the committee that has been drafting many laws. We've just finished this morning submitting, I think, a total of 12 bills to change the entire education infrastructure. The focus, improve access, improve equity, and improve governance. Thank you, Karuti.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I think he has qualified to. Now, Professor Mugendi is chairing a very important committee that usually negotiates even with the government about funding and many other issues. Professor Mugendi is the Vice Chancellor at Embu University, but he was also at the University of Nairobi until he got appointed to that position. Professor Mugendi is one of the most published Kenyans, well, Africans, if I can say that. So he knows the challenges we face in terms of presence in scientific knowledge, in terms of challenges of the university. Professor Mugendi, we are going to the second floor with the president. How will you summarize your discussion? And we are going, he might actually design you drop on the first floor, right? And in the meantime, I'll ask Open University to begin also having an idea about what they can say, but they will not be allowed into the lift.
Thank you very much, our MC. Yes, it's a tough one, but I want to say that as the speaker who has spoken ahead of me has indicated, the university landscape or the universities, public universities, for a while had been faced with huge challenge, and the challenge was really to do with the financing. The debts in the universities were increasing, and some of the universities were already in ICU, others were ended there, and you could literally draw and graph and align and determine when all these universities will collapse. Indeed, if it's not that public universities are public concern, some of them would have closed shop a long time ago because we've been insolvent. Some of us have been insolvent for quite a while. But I want to say that I think the presidential working team didn't see that, and they came up with some very innovative ways of ensuring that universities are funded sustainably going forward. And therefore, I would want to say, obviously, the challenge that has been there, the universities, is the fact that financing has not been adequate. We believe that in the new funding model, things are going to change. And I don't want to dwell much on the funding model, but what I want to say, because I was given only 1 minute or 25 seconds. Okay, now I've only utilized the 5 seconds. So, going forward, I think the biggest challenge that we have in the universities is to spur our lecturers, our researchers in the universities to be able to conduct meaningful research that is able to help this country move to the next level. And obviously, research is expensive, and therefore to call upon the government also to support research in our universities. I know for a long time we've depended on people from outside, organizations from outside to support us. And as you've learned on my own right, I am a researcher, and I've been supported by people from out to do research. But we also would want to see the government moving in this space, like developed countries, whereby then the government is also expending a bit of its resources in supporting research, because I don't think we can be able to develop and move to where we want to be if we are not spending money in research. So that is my challenge that I see, of course, amongst many other challenges, but funding, especially in the area of research, that is going to be a big challenge as we move forward, assuming then the operations issues and everything else will be taken care of by the new funding model. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Does he qualify to go to second floor? He does. He can go. I should have made it very clear when I was introducing Madam PS, Dr. Beatrice Nyangala, who she is, because she was in PASGA. That actually part of the some of the programs that we are proud of today, the PhD program, the capacity building program, were on her docket. So we are. I don't know how to relate with her now, whether as a government official or as PASGA, so I'm conflicted. But all the same, we honor and we honor and seriously honor very much because of what she has been for the PhD training program within the region. But let me say, we have also started an open university in the country fairly recently. And I would like to have the person in charge of that open university to give us an idea about what it is and what kind of value addition it's adding to the country. And I will ask also Professor Eunice Kamara to begin thinking about why are we low on scientific output in Africa, and what can we do to address that anomaly, if it's an anomaly. Professor Monza. He's a good friend, so I can snatch a mic from him anytime.
Maybe let me begin by first acknowledging the peers and all the visitors. Most welcome. And thanks for the invitation, my friend Pauline. Thanks the moderator for the opportunity to speak on the Open University of Kenya. The university was chartered on the 3rd of August last year. And Section 24 of the Universities Act. And the whole process was spearheaded by the PS, Madam Beatrice Nyangala here. Professor Dote was in the Technical Working Committee together with Madam Patricia here and others. The university has 7 flagship programs that we are already implementing. And these 7 programs are focusing on what makes the university unique and being a specialized university. That's what the Act says, that the university shall be established under that specialized section of the laws of Kenya. The first thing about the 7 programs is to enable accessibility to all those who need education, higher education. We are also focusing on affordability. These programs are charging about 1/4 of the fees that conventional universities are charging. We are also looking at inclusivity so that all the students who may not have a chance to go to university have now an opportunity to go through higher education while they are working. We are also focusing on openness in the sense that the admission criteria is flexible and all those who may have had prior learning will have a chance to come to the university. Prior learning here includes anybody who has a certificate lasting a few months or a diploma or any other qualification that is relevant to the 7 flagship programs is welcome to apply and be assessed for admission to the university. We are also focusing, more importantly, on quality. The quality focus here is based on the kind of assessment that we are giving our students, authentic assessment. Authentic assessment enables us to ensure the students are motivated and they are able to be assessed effectively in terms of assessing whether they have learned what they stand for. Finally, the Open University is admitting students. There's no time limit because you get admitted, and so you're most welcome to participate and collaborate with us. We are a new university and we are to an engagement with PASCA and all the others, including Carnegie, for purposes of enhancing our feasibility and also support to our students and faculty in capacity building. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Oh yes, it is an online university in the sense that all our programs have been developed by the best experts that we can afford. Most of them came from those who participated in the PEDAL program. Actually, almost all of them. From Nigeria, from Uganda, from South Africa, from Kenya. They are the ones who develop the programs that we are implementing at the Open University. Flagship programs including Bachelor of Education Technology, Bachelor of Business and Entrepreneurship, Bachelor of Economics and Statistics, Bachelor of Data Science, Bachelor of Cybersecurity and Digital Forensics, Postgraduate Diploma in Leadership, and Postgraduate Diploma in Educational Technology. So those are the programs we're beginning with, but this year, we want to begin also developing others, including languages, machine learning, and artificial intelligence, up to 5 of those additional programs. Thank you very much, Professor.
Thank you very much, Professor Manga. I would like us to go straight to Eunice Kamara now and just tell us why we have low scientific outputs. Yes, you are.
Well, if I have 25 seconds, I'll tell the president, please talk to the executive director of PASGA. And you already have the person inside your house, Madam PS, Dr. Muganda, and let them tell you what they are doing at PASGA, because it would make a difference for you. That's what I would say in 25 minutes. But to expound why I would say that, you heard me introduce myself and I said I'm a major beneficiary of PASGA. I was actually a paparazzi lecturer. A paparazzi lecturer is a train yourself lecturer. I was teaching the way I was taught because nobody had ever taught me how to teach. I was barely doing research. Then I came to PASGA for the PDT program. I got trained on how to do research. I came to PASGA. I got trained on in PEDO. I became a peddler. I started training others in PEDO. And today, I feel very happy with myself and what things I am doing. Focusing on research, we are not producing. The last time I checked, I think the entire Africa was contributing 2% of scientific outputs in terms of publications, in terms of whatever research outputs you think about. 2%, the entire Africa. Why is this? In my assessment, having taught at the university for more than 30 years, including teaching research methodology, like a paparazzi before I was trained by PASGA, many of us in the universities just don't have the capacity to do research. And I'll explain what capacity we are lacking. Sometimes we have the science, the research methodology, for example, but we don't know that it takes sitting still for long hours to write a winning proposal. We think we can write quickly and submit and it gets money. We don't know how to cooperate with others, collaborate with others, so that together we work and make some output. There are many things we don't know. And I think if we put more effort in building the capacity of researchers, we wouldn't complain about money in the universities. I don't think we would, because then we would have more than we can do. And I'm saying this because individually, I'm least bothered at the university because I'm doing enough research. on my own. I think capacity strengthening is number one. Capacity strengthening, capacity strengthening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are slowly coming to the end of the first round of discussions. And I will ask one of the students who has finished. Oh, sorry. Yes, please. And this table can interrupt me anytime. Sorry.
I just have a question. Totally capacity building. You know, Carnegie Corporation is a drop in the ocean, and Africa is a huge ocean. But we have been investing in capacity building for about 40 years, well, 30 years. So should we be doing, all of us, should we be doing something other than what we're doing? Or is it simply a matter of, scale? Because, again, so many people are involved. So because we're hearing the same thing all the time, but, why little progress given the investments from outside and from within?
Thank you. Thank you very much for that question. First, I would like to I don't know, but I can estimate how long Carnegie has been working with PASGA. But I think Carnegie's investment in PASGA has paid a lot of dividends, if you ask me, in terms of the research output that is coming from the people who have been trained and have been training for PASGA. I can count those. There are many. Yeah, those people who've gone through the master's and the PhD in public policy, again, they are producing. If you look at the products of PASGA over the few years that you've worked with them, you can see that what you're doing with them is something that is paying a lot of dividends. And that's why I said, if I was to talk to the president, I would say, go to PASGA and see what is happening there. Because before I came to PASGA, I had taught research methodology for more than 20-something years. But I didn't know how to teach research methodology. So I was teaching, but there was no learning. I was doing research, but there was no output. So it's not just about teaching, this is how you do research. There's a lot that goes with it in terms of hands-on, which PASGA seems to have mastered. Thank you.
To add to that, I think we need to say that there are very few organizations like Carnegie who focuses on higher education and building capacity for higher education. There are research projects, there are research grants in different places, but the target is very different in terms of capacity development. And that's something that we have started knowing and recognizing. If you were to do a mapping of organizations that target higher education and building capacity at PhD level, capacity at the faculty level, they are very different. And therefore, that's why I think Carnegie's support and intervention is very special of a kind because of the soft targeting that it does. I will proceed on and say that we have private universities in this country. Their challenges are unique. Their outputs are incredible. Connection with the industry is what we require in many instances. But I'll ask Professor Gateru also to prepare and answer the question, what are private universities doing to address some of the challenges? At the same time, we have got a colleague from Nigeria, Professor Babalola, Amenja, a philanthropist from Amenja, a philanthropist. I won't say much because I don't think I'm entitled to say much about that. I hope the technical the technology will allow us to speak to him. But let me ask the student who has completed his PhD to just tell us what it takes to finish in time and what is his advice to the rest. And he has got just only 1 second to speak to the president. And after that, we shall go to Professor Gateru and then online, and then we shall ask Professor Richardson whether she has any question to ask people. And then after that, we can go to another round of discussions to see opportunities for funding.
Thank you very much, Prof. And there are many factors at play that influence completion of PhDs, but funding is one of those that is very key. And I'm very sure people in this room will agree to that. From my own standpoint, the presence of the funding that we got with the rest of my other colleagues, it helped us have a community, and all of us were staying together. And that built a supportive community whereby we were every day engaging in our work, talking about our work. Let it be preparing dinners, let it be walking to our reading rooms. So we kept together, and that formed a community that held each other to highest values, and it kept sharpening us as we moved along the journey and supporting ourselves. But also the resources enable our professors to support us when it comes to being able to reach them. They have the library resources, they have the access to the latest journals, they have the access even to afford a cup of tea, to invite you as their student and meet and have that, and being able to have those kinds of fellowships that help you to have intentional mentorship with the student that you're in. But also, the other factors that would help or can help other students that are still on their PhDs is to understand that this is a commitment that you get on. So there are those that get onto their PhD journeys and still have work, have other priorities, and have other things going. And that sometimes, or in many times, delays their completion rates, and it gives a divided attention. But for a doctoral study to be very meaningful is one to set themselves apart and be committed to a journey of formation for a given period of time that they're involved and invested in that.
Let us clap for him. He finished in good time. I'll ask you, Professor Gateru, to come and just tell us about the state of private universities. And actually, we should be borrowing money from private universities, shouldn't we? We should be borrowing money from private universities. Right?
We'll get there soon. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm glad to be here. My name is Robert Gateru, Vice Chancellor, Riara University, which is down the road from here. We've had a long-standing partnership with PASGA. And when you talk about capacity building, PASGA, through the leadership of dear PS, during COVID, they built the capacity of all our faculty members on online teaching pedagogy. And we're able to transition our students straight away. And actually during COVID, we had the largest graduation ceremony. So students were able to pass through, and faculty, we still have the course with us at the university. And so I really want to really appreciate the support that PASGA has given to all of us. And I want to assure you, Madam PS, we are still peddling and peddling, transformative pedagogies. Coming to the discussions of today, really, I think most of us are aware about the reforms from the year 2017, when the number of students qualifying for university education decreased. And there has been quite a number of reforms that have taken place since then. So private universities were part of that. And whereas a number of them expanded their granaries because of some new students who were coming, some remained small or stayed away and stayed to the course of being truly private. And now with the new funding model, private universities have accepted that this is the funding model that is there. And so private universities have to go back to being truly private. And that comes with a lot of very good partnerships with industry, very good partnerships with donors and development partners, and also focusing on the student outcomes. So, for example, at my university, we track the employability of our graduates. And for the last 5 years, we've had 6 graduations, about 93% 1 year after graduation, and about 50% before graduation. And that's really where private sector, private education should be, focusing on not just on mass. We can't compete with government. I can't compete with Professor Mugendi in trying to have the students he has. But private universities are able to offer niche programs that are speaking specifically to certain targets, certain sectors of the economy. So moving forward, I think from where we sit, we want to see a situation where, yes, the sector has been in turbulence since 2016, I may say so, but now it's settling down, or less it has settled down. Few issues here and there, but they're being sorted. But I would want us to cast our eyes much further and say, how can we make the Kenyan higher education sector, speaking for Kenya, the destination for every African who is looking for a good quality education? How can we make higher education in Kenya? Everybody in East Africa and the larger Eastern and Central Africa to be able to come and access our market so that we're not looking at just the Kenyan students. Education in Kenya is highly respected globally, and we have an opportunity to tap into that. Number two is as we all know, Africa has the demographic dividend. How can we empower, and how do we need to empower our institutions to empower our young people to be the drivers of economies outside Kenya, including in Europe, South Korea, Italy, and other places where populations are dwindling. The number of young people are not there. So we have a golden opportunity to convert our institutions into that kind of a, and then also East Africa, for some time, the East African community was the fastest growing regional bloc in the world. I don't know whether it still is, I have not checked that. But also, how can we now utilize our institutions to empower the East African economies to become global leaders through technology, innovation, and many other things that we need to do. We have very talented young people here in Kenya and in East Africa and across Africa, and we need to see how we can tap to that. Finally, I just mentioned about capacity building. You asked about that, and this is a challenge to government through our Madam PS, continued investments in research and innovation. The Act says 2% of GDP, which according to current statistics should be about 1.3 billion US dollars or thereabouts. We are not yet there. We are not yet even at $5 million. So to say, in terms of direct funding from research. So those are some of the things that we would like to see addressed. Thank you.
Trust the private sector to take all the time, because since we are expecting money from them, you can't even try to tell them, please, your time is up. I don't know whether Professor Babalola is able to join us, and okay, he's not able to join us, but I wish he would have been able to join us. I'll be asking Madam PS later on to tell us, why is it that Kenya has never thought about actually performance financing of universities to correct some of these particular challenges? But before we go there, I would like us to pause a little bit, allow people to have a dessert as we ask Professor Richardson whether she has got questions to ask before Colin Sodote takes us through another round of discussions. I will continue pushing him in this respect. He's wondering why I've seen that. But we can allow people to have dessert for 1 minute, and then Professor Richardson will come with questions. Even Steve Adediana, if you have got questions, you'll do, and I will also be asking the chair, Pasga, if he has anything to say or to ask Dr. Beatrice Nyangala to speak. I will ask that we think about that. But you can have a dessert as we wait for the next round of discussions. Only 1 minute pause.
Tired of old school marketing tactics? Forget outdated email, cold calling, and SMS marketing. It's time to evolve. Embrace WhatsApp for better customer connection in 2023. I use Wadi to send targeted, interactive WhatsApp messages
from different institutions that finance higher education through the government channels here. I'll ask them to speak later on, but let's hear from you. And then we shall call other colleagues.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for having us. I have arrived in Kenya yesterday for the first time, so I've been very struck by the warmth of the hospitality we've received. So thank you very much. I have experience in the higher educational systems in a number of countries. My undergraduate degree was in Trinity College in Dublin, in Ireland. My postgraduate degree on a scholarship was at Harvard in the United States, where I was on the faculty. I then became Vice Chancellor of the University of St. Andrews in Scotland, and from there, the University of Oxford in England. And now I'm president of the Carnegie Corporation in New York. So the last year is the first year of my career that I haven't been in a university. So I feel right at home here today, being surrounded by people who work in higher education. So delighted to have this opportunity to chat with you and to learn more about the higher education system here and the challenges you're facing. I'm struck as you're talking about the challenges that they are often the challenges faced by all higher educational systems. The challenge of funding is a perennial one, as indeed is the challenge of equity and access, something I've tried to work on throughout my career. And these are things that Andrew Carnegie, who is the founder of our corporation, which is in fact a foundation, felt deeply about. He was a young man who emigrated with his impoverished family from Scotland to America at the end of the 19th century, started work as a child laborer and went on to become the richest man in the world. And he believed that education was the engine of social mobility, the engine of the economy, and the driver of international peace. So he believed in investing in higher education and investing in people, and we have sought to continue his legacy throughout that time. I'm struck at that while we've been in this field for a number of years, and my colleagues, Deanne and Steve, have been in it a great deal longer, the problems seem to remain the same. So I'm a president of a foundation, not a country, and I'm not on an elevator with you. I'm over lunch, so we don't have a minute. We have a little more time. But my question to you would be, given we have limited resources, but we share your commitment to higher education, but especially to the importance of research and the importance of networks amongst academics. So many of the gravest challenges facing the world today are not respecters of institutional boundaries, disciplinary boundaries, or even national boundaries, which makes the kind of networks that PASCAR is trying to, or works so successfully to promote, critically important. So my question to you is, how can we, as the Americans put it, get the biggest bang for our buck? We have limited resources to expend in the areas that we all believe in. How can we have maximum impact in building capacity, in strengthening these alliances, and ensuring access to education here in Kenya? Thank you.
Who would like to take a go on that question? Nasisio? You are an African. Who would like to take a go at that question? Yes, Eunice? And then Prof. Gacho here.
Thank you very much for the questions. One of the things I admire PASGA most about, and I say when I grow up, I'll probably start a PASGA. But it's the way every coin moves so far. How does that happen? Let's take the PEDO program, for example. We came in as university lecturers from across Africa. We were trained. There was peer training across ourselves, training from IDS, training from different places. And then we are out there now training others. So that multiplication of effect is something I so much admire in the work that PASGA does. I'm trying it out in my own small way with my students, trying to mentor and give the capacity for them to go and become champions. And you can see now a shilling put in at the beginning, its effect continue to multiply long after a program is gone. And that's what I could say, that's the best practice I think I have seen with PASGA, which is something to talk about. Thank you.
Professor Victor?
Thank you very much. For me, really, I would want to go back to still the issue of capacity building. I know the Carnegie Corporation of New York has invested heavily in this area, but the need is so great that we need to get to a point where we reach a critical mass of both institutions and individuals who are, the way that Dr. Beatrice converted us into peddling. It's a term we use, pedagogical leadership. How do we get a critical number of institutions across Kenya and East Africa to the new entrepreneurial sort of institution that is looking to create solutions to the challenges in society? And that can only be done collectively, not individual institutions. And also number two is where we look at, and for example, I made a comment somewhere in a forum, there's no school for vice chancellors. We climb through the ladders and you're put in a position and you're tasked to run an institution that is holding the destinies of very many people. How do we build capacity all the way to cause a systemic transformation of our higher education? I think that's something that we could look at together and see how it looks like. And also to support innovation. Our students are very innovative, but sometimes they're looking at where can we even get resources to try out things. Universities, we have pending bills, we have many other things we are trying to pay. A student is not able to access even $2,000 to try out their innovation, and that could be the next big thing. Thank you.
Professor Monza, yes. 1 minute.
The Open University is a live example where the people trained through this program helped us to develop the 7 programs where we have enrolled now 1,000 students within less than 2 months, and we envisage to have 8,000 enrolled to use those programs developed by the investment that was done here. So continue to invest in capacity building and in programs development, and the coin will reach far and far. Thank you very much.
Let me hand also to the solutions and just, and of course we shall leave the most difficult questions to our Madam PS because she has been with PASGA and now she's where solutions are made. But I would like to say that actually the best way to do this is to have networks. Because in the past you are trained as an individual and you go on your own and maybe you'll not go back to the university. In the old days, you would be trained in the West and you wouldn't come back to Africa. In the old days, you'd be trained in the West, you wouldn't come back to Kenya. We left for PhDs, 8 of us, only 3 of us are in Kenya today. That was the 1990s. Others are in San Diego, others are in Washington, DC, universities teaching there. They don't come back. So that's capacity lost in one or the other. But investing in this particular kind of program where you're saying co-supervise with colleagues from Ibadan, with colleagues from University of Cape Town is the way to go because you are building capacity locally. You are building capacity that will be left within. But the most important thing is also capacity through research development. Because we realize that some of the major failures we have is because the supervisors who are supervising our students also don't do research. And therefore, there is a need to start also thinking about performance in our universities, Molim. We need to start, there is no way you can be supervising when you have, for 3 years, you have published nothing, right? And you are not published anything, not because A, you don't have access to grants, 2, you don't have opportunities to network with colleagues, and therefore this networking we are talking about, this particular program, puts peer pressure on everyone involved to produce and be something different from others. But at this time, I will ask Rengera and Monari to decide who among them will say what the government is doing. But let's also give credit to our government. From 1963, there is no single month that the government of Kenya has failed to pay salaries for people working in civil service or public service. At the university level, we may cry wherever we can cry, but I don't think the government from 1963 has never failed to pay salaries that I know of. Eaton could be having his problems with ghost workers and something else, but I think we can give a credit where it is due, because the government has never actually failed to pay salaries, which is a major plus compared to several other countries. But then we have also got to think about what do we do with those salaries, right? And let's not even ask a question of how much, but what do you do with those salaries? Because there are several opportunities that need to be exploited, but that relationship is what we have to think about. Jeff and Rengera, you must converse on phones and see who is going to speak and talk about funding higher education and the challenges of doing so before I allow you to say anything. But I'll ask the chair of PASGA to be saying something before you decide among yourselves who is going to say something about challenges of funding higher education. And then Nasisho will speak, and after that you say, and then I will ask Madam Beatrice also to say something about the country.
I'll try to be very short. I'm just to say that I'm very thankful that all of you made time to be with us today and share firsthand your experience with PASCA, your experience with the support we have been getting from Carnegie, and the things that you see that can bring more results, right? And the idea of networking, of building capacity, and investing in programs that then get continuity on their own. I very much agree with that. I'm very thankful that Carnegie has been helping us to put in place those kinds of programs.
Now, I'll ask Jeff to summarize his dissert.
Thank you very much, Prof. For me, I'll be very brief. I think much has been said on the funding aspect. The Universities Fund has been funding universities based on the grant system. But this year, we changed to the new funding model. And the grant system was based that the government was supposed to give 80% of the differentiated unit cost, that is the cost of the program, to fund each program based on the number of students. And 20% was to come from the Higher Education Loans Board in terms of a loan. And if the student does not want a loan, then the household was expected to chip in the 20%. But what we realized over the years since this was established in 2016, the government was not able to fund the 80%, and the funding reduced to up to last financial year to 48%. In fact, if the government had not come in to place to put in the new funding model, then we would have seen the funding going as low as 34%. So the new funding model has been able to change the way we fund students here. And now, instead of giving them the grants, the students must be able to apply for scholarships from the Universities Fund and then also get a loan from the Higher Education Loans Board. So this funding crisis, which over the years has been building, is what that led to the high debts that the universities were incurring, up to 77 billion Kenya shillings. But we believe that the new funding model will be able to change the tide going back. But we believe as a Universities Fund that there are few things that we need to complement the government, not only the government initiative of a new funding model, we also need to work closely with industry and develop PPPs so that the universities can be able to benefit. I think that area needs to be worked on. Number two is commercialization of research. It is very important that we encourage universities to commercialize their research. And lastly, we need to see how we can have entrepreneurial universities in Kenya so that as we move forward, more of our students and universities are becoming more entrepreneurial and become more autonomous
less dependent on the government than it is the case right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And now I'll ask Collins Odote to take it over from me.
Thank you very much, Professor Karuti. Karuti had asked Monari and Rengera to speak amongst themselves and agree, but thereafter, he decided to disappear, so he leaves the conflict to me. I will resolve it by asking Rengera to speak for 30 seconds, because Monari is the philanthropist, Rengera is the businessman. So tell us the business aspect of the funding.
Okay, thank you, Collins, for giving us this opportunity. I will only speak actually a bit on what are the new developments you are seeing on the new funding model. We are now getting to the second wave. This morning, we've just been at a placement board meeting, looking at the numbers that have come from last year. And apparently, PS, it's very exciting that the people who are doing the modeling, they gave us a number this year that we will have 201,000 C+ and above. Do you know it came correctly to 201,000? I'm amazed about that modeling that is so accurate to the number, which means the budget that we're gonna give government in terms of the resource requirement for higher education is actually to the T. It is agreeing to the T. And when you look at those numbers, this year, for example, because you have heard from Professor Mugendi, you have heard from Robert Kateru about the challenges of financing in higher education and the institutions themselves. In fact, we reached a point at one time and said, why should universities be having schools of business if they cannot manage the cash flow that they have? Because what are you then teaching your students? And until this government actually came into place, this problem was developing into a time bomb that nobody knew how it will actually be resolved. As Professor Kateru says, way back in 2016, when we had the Matiang'i effect, that's the time the number of students with C+ and above just went down because of stricter examination and administration at Form 4 level. And therefore, we had more spaces at the universities, both in public and private universities, and then you had no student to be able to fill up those spaces. Jeff has already talked about the challenges that we had also, where government committed to pay 80% of DUC, but the best they were able ever to do in 2018 was about 61%. So you then wonder, this student who is going to teach him or teach the child at about 61%. And therefore, the intent of this new funding model is actually to come and cover that cost of Egerton paying 57% of the salaries of the student because of the money that they have. And therefore, when we look at the fiscal space in terms of numbers, at the university level, we are seeing about 35 billion that has moved for only this cohort of the 2022 KCSE. TVET, we have seen about 9.5 billion again moving as new money. So I want to confirm that from a funding perspective, we think the model is going to save actually universities with the new liquidity that is actually now available to the universities. And this is both private and public, because private are not getting scholarship. Scholarship, you don't pay back, but loan, they will be able to access the loans. And that is also helping universities, because remember, private universities, we have only been giving them only about 40,000 or thereabouts. We are now talking about a situation where they are getting up to 60% of the cost of the program, across board. And that should be able actually to settle the private universities also in a better way than, the way it was hitherto. The biggest concern is affordability of the new funding model. This morning, the PS lenders in discussing the strategic plan of the ministry for the next 4 or 5 years. And one of the key things that is concerning the entire sector, we've done some simulation with TVET and University Funding Board and ourselves, and we require about 909 billion Kenya shillings in the next 5 years. Now that is almost a trillion. Our budget is hoping it will still be 3.6 trillion. So you can start understanding where, things now are becoming a bit problematic. And we must look for what I think I've learned from many of us in terms of entrepreneurial universities who are then able to offer scholarships, like the big ones, so that you don't necessarily have to depend on government, because I think it is signaling to us that government funding will not be sufficient to be able to cover the full funding of the student. I submit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rengera. We complain that there's no money in the sector and in the country, but Rengera and PS are running. They said what budget? 909 billion. So Professor Mwanga, you now can't complain about money. But let me invite the person who, until a few years ago, was sitting on this side, worrying about the sector from a research perspective, gave rise to pedal, and elections came. And I sitting on the other side, implementing the ideas that she had to just share with us in terms of where is higher education now, where is it going to, and what are the prospects for engagement with different players, including the Carnegie Foundation. PS Beatrice. And thank you very much for coming.
Yes, so Dem Richardson and the team from Carnegie, our chair, our acting CEO, colleagues and friends, good afternoon. I'm overwhelmed by, this occasion. It is a great homecoming for me after a year of diverse experiences. So I just begin by really asking our chair and Professor Kanyinga, is he still in? Yeah, okay. So you can stand and we give you a round of applause because you mentored me. Yes, please. Thank you very much for giving this gift that I am to Kenya and to the university subsector. So as a ministry and a State Department for Higher Education and Research, our main responsibility really is to formulate policy and then oversee its implementation and, create the standards that we would like our education system to meet. But in terms of implementing the different programs, we do that through our state agencies. So for example, the university standards and quality assurance through the Commission for University Education, funding through the Higher Education Loans Board and University Funds Board and all other agencies. So we all acknowledge that where we are, I think we've made great strides in access. But when it comes to quality, we have a problem. And so how do I see myself as the leader of my team going with this issue? We are looking at interventions that can help us progressively improve on the quality of our education. And so one of the key things that we want to focus on is building centers of excellence. And a center of excellence in its entirety. So for example, if we look at an engineering department, what are the highest standards that we can aspire for? What are the inputs that we require in terms of the facilities, the equipment, and even the teaching staff? So to do this, we have, of course, to start with a few programs. So for example, there's a conversation that's ongoing with African Development Bank to start with just 3 centers of excellence. So heavy investment of resources. So where am I getting to with this? In terms of impact, yes, we can spread across the continent, but then we must target a few areas that we need to deepen. And so when we isolate areas that we deepen, then we can actually begin to see the impact. So spread across, yes, but if you deepen the outcomes in a few areas, then it becomes easier to cascade that experience across the continent, across other programs. So that would be my submission. However, again, we realize that as a government, we cannot do this alone. So we really welcome partnerships. And so for us, from where I sit, is creating policies that make it easier for our universities, for our agencies to deliver through partnerships and addressing some of those obstacles. So coming out of the Presidential Working Party on Education Reform, we are developing a session paper that will have a wide range of policies that really cover some of the obstacles that stakeholders have shared with us are, for example, constraining partnerships. And in terms of the financing gap, again, we realize that we cannot attain quality by funding all of the inputs on our own. So through the help, for example, we would need to raise a very huge resource base to be able to fund our students through loans. So what Dringera didn't tell you is that he's also working with the World Bank to see how he can design a social bond that then through which we can fund more loans for our students. But specifically on the interventions through the Carnegie Corporation, this doctoral capacity building, I cannot emphasize how important it is for us, even looking at this whole concept of centers of excellence. We need a critical mass of academic staff with doctorate. And so the need for capacity building will never end, really. And in terms of impact also, you should not be discouraged, because when you look around, you see a constellation of stars that are rising from this capacity building that have then the position to influence even greater. For example, I am now able to draw the lessons and the networks of PASGA to deepen the work that has been supported by so many partners, including the Carnegie Corporation, to deepen it in this country. And of course, nothing works easy without money. So, and there's government red tape. So all this time, we have been mobilizing resources. I think the first evidence you see is in the Open University. We would have looked for consultants from across the world. We would have gotten anybody to design these programs. But for me, from where I sit, I knew that pedagogy is so important. And I knew that PASGA is the pioneer of pedagogical innovation on the continent. And so I drew in the network of PASGA, and I know there'll be many more opportunities for doing that. For example, the competency-based education. We want to mainstream innovative pedagogy throughout our universities. Again, I am looking for resources. And when those resources are available, I will come back to PASGA and to the PASGA networks and give them an opportunity to deepen that network. So investing in these networks is very important. First, to help expand the reach of the network by sheer numbers, and then identifying projects through which, through their interventions, they are able to spread what they stand for. And as I conclude again, centers of excellence, quality education, which is a big problem. Please, I urge you to partner with us through PASGA to continue building the capacity of doctoral students and strengthening the networks through which we will always draw upon them to intervene in this country and beyond, as we share the lessons first from the East African community and then at the African Union level and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you very much, PS. Let's give the PS another round of applause. Colleagues, I know we are extremely behind schedule, so please allow me to end this now and only invite the Executive Director of PASGA to then say the last words as we did. But thank you very much for an excellent conversation. We look forward to seeing you again. You can see we have very robust conversation in the country. Pauline, please.
Wow, that has been a very insightful session, and you'll all agree with me. So, Madam Richardson and your team, we are very, very delighted. And I'm always excited to see my sister, Madam P.S. So thank you very much for gracing our occasion. I also want to extend our appreciation to the chair of our board, and indeed Professor Karuti. Thank you very much for being behind us and really giving us the boost that we need. And indeed, all the invited guests, thank you very much for gracing our occasion. Now, in Africa, we don't send our guests away. We send them with something that they will remember. And I will invite my colleague Constance to come and quickly hand over a small token of appreciation for you to keep PASGA in your memories.
Good afternoon once again. Mine is very short. What I'm supposed to do has already been said by Madam Pauline. So we have a small gift. It's the African culture, it's the Kenyan culture, and the Pascal culture as well. So, Madam President, if you don't mind, with your team, Madam PS, kindly rise up so that we may hand over these gifts to our guests. So we are giving the first one to the president. This is Madam Laws. We really thank God for her. We appreciate the partnership. We appreciate the funding, the support that has come along from Carnegie for the many years they've partnered with us. Thank you very much. So the next is going to Diana, and Mr. Chair is going to give it out to the Vice President.
We're all friends, so it's good. Very appropriate. Thank you. Give me a hug. For the old
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Alas, that we don't leave. Then we have the last one to Steve.
We're also old friends. So.
Okay, so much friendship here. Thank you very much, Chair, for that kind gesture. And I think I'll bring back Pauline. Much appreciated.
Thank you very much. I kindly request that we all go down and take a group photo and then, yes, bring this to closure. Thank you.
Thank you. Downstairs. Okay.